Good afternoon or good morning, everyone, to our Business One Q&A Café. Alex Waddell will be presenting establishing partial automation in goods receipt PO to more accurately accrue expense. Not next Thursday, but the Thursday afterwards, so Thursday, May 28th. We'll be doing item master and inventory primer for Business One. So if you're interested, please go to our resources page on our website and scroll all the way to the bottom, and you can see all of our upcoming Q&A cafes. Today we'll be recording the session, so please make sure that you keep yourself on mute. And if you have any questions or you just want to chat, go into the chat or the questions box, and we'll get to it right after Alex has done his presentation portion. We just started a YouTube channel for Business One resources, so please go to our VistaView Solutions YouTube channel, and we have a playlist especially for all of our Business One resources. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Alex.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kayla. So welcome everybody. Today's session is part of our series of managing cash. So we were trying to think of ways to optimize cash flow for people or to keep an eye on more accurately capturing expenses. So this is going to be a bit of a hybrid. We're going to be doing a fairly technical look today at how to write some queries. And so either you're here because you're interested in the three-way match AP process, or maybe you're here because you're interested in understanding queries better, or maybe both. Hopefully, you'll come out of this knowing both. If you don't know anything about writing queries in the system, then welcome. I'm glad you're here. Hopefully, you'll get something out of it. Any queries that I do right here together with you, we'll have Kayla send them out after the seminar, so you're welcome to use the query. So all sorts of reasons you would write queries in the system. We're trying to think of creative ways we could use queries to kind of optimize, make the system better. So one idea we came up with is perhaps creating a query on unfulfilled goods and service receipts to help us know where receipts have been done that don't necessarily relate to inventory. So what I mean by that, if we go into a purchase order in the system and we have something that's inventory related. So for example, I'm going to go back through a couple POs here. I've been doing some other testing, but so here's a mouse for USB. This is a closed PO. So if we look at our relationship map here, we have a purchase order and a goods receipt PO. That goods receipt PO, if I go to accounting, it does have a journal entry associated with it. And that journal entry is, debiting our inventory and crediting our goods received not invoiced. And then of course, when we do the payable for this, the payable is going to debit the goods received not invoiced account, clearing out our $20 and set up our AP liability. So when it comes to inventory related items, B1 is good at it. B1 actually does the full three-way match process, and it allows you to record your inventory at the time of receipt. What B1 is not good at is when it is a non-inventory purchase. So if it's a service-related purchase order, you can certainly do a goods receipt, but it doesn't do anything. The system just records the transaction, but it doesn't create a journal entry. So what is the difference between those two? So if we're looking at a specific item, an item can be inventory or non-inventory. So this USB mouse is flagged as an inventory item. Therefore, it's got a countable quantity in the system, and that quantity will be entered into the system at the point of the receipt. You may also be aware that if you fail to do the goods receipt and you just do an AP invoice, the system is smart enough to know that a goods receipt was never done. So at that point, it's just going to do a two-way match instead of a three-way match, and it'll debit your inventory at that point. If you have any questions as we're going along, please just feel free to drop them in the question panel. Everybody's on mute, but if you type your question in as you go, I'm trying to keep an eye on that panel, so I will try and answer any questions that pop up. So if something is flagged as non-inventory, it's going to hit an expense account. That's one way that you can book an expense-related purchasing chain. Another option is you could do a service type. So there's two different types of goods receipt. You can do something as an item or as a service. We'll look at both of those. So we'll come up with a solution for both. You may decide to use both. You may decide to use one or the other. That's really up to you. So to understand the difference between those two chains, let's maybe just start with a blank purchase order, and we'll do what's probably the simplest one as far as writing a query, which is to do a service type PO. So what I mean by that is I'm gonna select my supplier and I'm gonna change this from item to service. And if you are not using this or not aware of this, what this does is it fundamentally changes your grid. So now you're no longer accessing the list of items from the item master. Instead, you're saying, I don't care about that list. I just want to create a purchase order for a expense account or a GL account of my choice, rather. So this could be anything that we want. So maybe this is a legal expense that we know is upcoming. So I'm going to invoke my GL account dropdown, and all my expenses start with a 6. So I can go down here and I can find, the expense that I want. Hopefully I have legal in my, I do. So here's legal fees. So it's going to hit that 60, oops, except I typed over it. So I think it was 66, legal fees 661. That's the GL account that I sort of have in play here. Let's see if I can widen this up. And then I would just put in the amount of it. So let's say it's just 50,000. And I'm going to add this purchase order to the system. So we've created PO 1266, and now we want to do a service confirmation. So this is an important part because in order for this whole query to work, there actually has to be a document to query. So if you want to implement a process like this in your organization, you need to make sure that whomever is actually confirming or understands that the service has been delivered is going in and creating this document. And that will be important because without this document for you to query, you won't be able to book the accrual. So if you're not doing that today, then I suspect what you're doing is you're canvassing your various departments with expenses at the end of each month and saying, hey, is anybody aware of any expenses or services that were delivered this month where we don't have the invoice yet, so that you can set up the accruals manually. That's a fairly common practice. If I get them to, instead of sending me an email at the end of the month, just say, hey, go in and do a goods and service receipt at the end of the month, and then I will know it has been done. So now they can go in, they can put in whatever the date was that the service happened. So we'll just say it happened really quickly, it happened today. And I'm gonna add this to the system. And now I've got a foundation document that I can query on. What I unfortunately do not have is I don't have a journal entry. So it would be nice if Business One actually just booked this entry for you, but there's no drill down area here. It knows this is not inventory related, it's service related. Therefore, it hasn't done a transaction. And until the AP invoice happens, you're not going to actually incur that expense on the system. Now, if the AP invoice takes 30 days or longer to come in, we're going to be looking at June now. And if you don't do an accrual, then obviously you're recognizing this expense in the wrong month. So how do we solve that? Let's create a query. So for now, I'm going to close these documents, kind of get them out of the way. If you've never used the query generator before, it's under Tools and Queries. And then you go to Query Generator. There's a query wizard. They both work to create queries. There's pros and cons to each one. For today, I'm just going to focus on the query generator, but feel free to explore the other one. If you're interested in doing more training on that, we could have a special training session on the difference between those two. So with the query generator, it takes you into this blank panel, and we need to understand, well, what tables are we going to query? After you've done this for a while, you just sort of start to know the tables. So I happen to know this table is OPDN, but if I hit the tab key, I do get a list of all the tables in the system. So I could either, you can get it from the source document. You could also search by the description. So if I'm searching for goods receipts, But if you do start searching for the description, you will see that there's a lot of table with similar names because they're doing various variations on those functions. So this does take a little bit of knowledge to know, but I happen to know that OPDN is goods receipt PO. So that's the header table where all the header information, and you'll recognize that if you launch the table because you'll see that I don't have any row information. I have everything about the header of the document. So let's go back to our goods receipt PO, look at that. And you can see that we've got a vendor, we've got a number, we've got a status, a posting date. So there's all sorts of information, but if you scroll down here, there's a ton of information. A lot of this is not even displayed on the screen because it's not really necessary to the user experience, but the system requires those fields. So I'm going to grab the ones that I want in my query. So let's take the document number, and all I'm doing is double clicking on the field. We could take document type. I'm definitely interested in the document status. So whether the document's open or closed, because that's going to indicate whether I want to actually query the information. I'm going to be interested in the posting date. And I'm definitely going to be interested in the customer, the customer/vendor code. In this case, it's a vendor. And that's probably all that I really need. I mean, you could scroll down here and add as many fields as you want. Now, what I like about the query generator is at any point in time, I could hit the execute button and I can kind of see my data, like what's it pulling. So this is a very broad query. It's searching the entire table for all documents because I haven't done any restrictions. And it's just pulling in those fields that I've selected. So why do I like this? I like this because I can easily go in here and say, hey, are these fields coming in and are they meaningful? Do they look as I expect them to look? I could sort on this. If I double click on one of the headers, I could reverse sort. So I could also kind of look at, hey, and if you're running this in your test system, you can copy the query over. So you may want to run the query in your test system so that you can create some test transactions and have a look at them. So you can see here, these are my service queries. So there's that LaserCom PO that I've done, 1240, just sitting here. Let's go get some more information on this particular item. So I have a choice here. I can either start limiting the table or I could start joining my other tables. Doesn't really matter what order I go in. In my case, let's maybe limit the table first. So when I run this, what I'm seeing here is that I'm interested in is really any service POs with a status of open. So my document type is S and my document status is O. So how do I filter on that? I go down to the where, and I just click my mouse here. I go back to my fields and I select which fields it is I want to filter on. So I'm going to say my document status, and then I'm actually typing this in here. And I need a single quote. So my document status is O for open. And because I want both of these parameters to be true. And my document type, which is this one here, is equal to an S. So what does the S mean? It means it's a service type, not an inventory type PO. And then I'm going to execute. So now I'm getting a lot less information. So this is telling me these are open service type POs. So if they're open, then there's no AP invoice. Therefore, presumably accrual still needs to be done on this. Okay, I'm going to hit the cancel button, go back to my query, and I'm going to enhance it some more. So let's get some row information. Now we're getting a little bit more complicated, but that's okay. I'm going to hit the tab button. So a little trick, whenever you see a table here, OPDN, that's a header table. The row table will always be the last three letters with the number 1 after it. So if I were to search on PDN1, then you can see right here in my description, this is saying all goods receipt PO rows. So I'm going to choose that table. And what's nice about the query generator, the query wizard does the same thing, is it automatically joins these tables for you. So if this looks hard, don't feel like it's daunting. I'm an accountant, I'm not a programmer, I'm not a code writer. This is just something that you'll get used to with practice. So you can see here, if you just want to understand what the system has done, is it's joined these two tables together. So the tables, OPDN, because that was the first table we selected, the system said, for the purpose of this query, I'm going to rename this and call it table 0. Why does it do that? So that up here when it does the selections, it makes the selection simpler to read. It says table 0, document number, table 0, document type. And that's how the system is going to know which table to go to and then which field to go to. So there'll just be a period separator. Then because we added a second table, the system made its own decision how to join those tables. It said, I'm going to do an inner join, and I'm not going to get into the difference between an inner join and an outer join right now. That does get a bit more technical, but let's just assume the system's right. In this case, it is. So it's proper join. It's an inner join. And it's saying that the row table, I'm going to name table 1. So we've got table 0 and table 1. And in table 0, it's joining the field called document entry, which is this one up here. And in table 1, table 0 the first time, now table 1, which is the rows, it's also joining a field with the exact same name. And oftentimes, and wherever you see something here that's bolded, that's telling you that this is a key index field. What those key fields represent is a field that is common across other tables and has a many-to-one relationship. So the document entry is the common field that is identified and joins those two tables together. So we will only have a single record with a document number in the goods receipt table, but in the row table, depending how many rows, I could have multiple records, and therefore I could have this many-to-one relationship. So I'm getting into a bit of detail there. That's maybe not important, but we've joined those tables, or the system has ideally joined it for us. So we're going to go back to our selection. We're going to make sure that we're highlighted on the right table. So I want to look at my rows, and I want to now add fields from that table. So what fields would I like? I would definitely like to know the item code, the description. Because this is a service type invoice, it doesn't have quantities, so I don't really have to worry about that. So let's just go straight for the price. And or the line total, once again, because there's no quantity unit of measure, those should be the same. And then if there's other things that are important to you because of your business, you could add them. So one thing that everybody has is an account code. We definitely want that. So what GL account are we driving this to? And then in addition, if you have project accounting, you potentially want that. If you have dimensions set up in the system, those are your OCR codes, which are here. So you could have dimension fields that you need to add to. So at any point, you can just sort of pause and hit the execute button and have a look at your preview and see what's coming in. So this is looking pretty good to me. I'm getting what I want. I'm getting my price, so I know I need to accrue $50,000 worth of legal expenses, 2 different open POs and one for $850,000. Now, what I don't have that's really ideal is I don't have a proper GL account. I've got what's called the SYS number. So if you are using a GL account with segments, very likely you are, then the system has 2 different elements. It's got an underlying number that you never see through the user interface, and you have to go to another table to figure out what your segments are. So let's go join that table. So I'm going to cancel out of this. And I happen to know that that table is called OACT, so I'm just going to cheat. But if you were searching, it's your GL accounts table. So I'm going to join this table too. And I can grab the information that I need. Now, I know there's a problem with this join. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. But let's just drive our segments. So I want my segment 0, my segment 1. I'm using a 3-segment chart of accounts, so that's all that I need. And I'm going to grab my account name. So I've got my proper description. So at any point in time, feel free to hit the execute to see what this looks like. So what this is pulling is it's pulling the accounts payable. So it hasn't grabbed my expense account, it's grabbed my control account. Why did it do that? Because it didn't really know what I wanted. It knew that I was joining another table because it was trying to be helpful. It said, okay, I'm going to assume that I'm joining this table through the account code in my account listing with where the first time I came across a GL account, which was called control accounts. That's not the way we want the join to work. So what I really want to join is based on the expense account code. So T1 account code. So I'm just going to take this, I'm going to do a Control C, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to override it here. And let's run this. So that's better. Now we're actually getting our legal fees GL account. So at this point, you might be done. You could say, and so once again, this kind of depends how you do your business. So if you do service type POs and service type goods receipts, this could be an adequate query for you to do your accrual. You now know that this is what I have to book into that account at the end of the month. And the way I would recommend doing this is a journal voucher. You could use the journal voucher import through Excel. You can take this query, you can say copy table. So you've highlighted that, and you could then just grab a, the Excel upload if you want, or you can do a macro, whatever you want to do. I'm not going to get into that here. So I'm just going to paste this into Excel. So now I've got that information in an Excel grid. So very easy to sort of manipulate that. So if you imagine that you had hundreds of open goods and service receipts, you could easily take this information, paste it into an upload template, and save you a lot of time for doing your accruals. Now, once your query is satisfactory in the system, you can do the save option and you can give it a name. So let's call this service receipts open accruals, something like that. You could assign categories if you want. I'm just going to put it in the general category. That's the only one I have here, and I'm going to hit save. And the only thing that I would point out is, and this is a bit of a frustration with this query, well, with any of the query designers, is once you close this query generator, you can no longer edit it inside this system. So just be aware of that. So what I mean by that is I'm going to close out all of this. You go home, you come back the next day to run your query. So I'm going to go to my query manager. So there's my query that was saved. I can go in, I can run it whenever I want, but all it's going to launch is the output screen. So at this point, if you want to modify this query, you now have to know, you have to go onto the edit button and you have to kind of work within this panel here. I find that a little bit more difficult. If you're a SQL person, maybe that's not a problem for you. My advice is keep that query generator open for a few hours until you've tested the query really thoroughly and you know you have all your fields. So that's a little trick. So this is a query we will send to you and you're welcome to use it. I'm going to show you another one. Maybe I'll do a little less talking. I'll go through it more quickly. But if let's take another scenario where maybe you're using non-inventory items instead of service POs. So that's another way that you could do buying in the system. So what do I mean by that? I'm going to create a purchase order. And that purchase order, why is my purchase order not opening? There we go. It's probably going to open a bunch of them on me now. So let's pick a company. And instead of doing service, we're going to do item. And I'm going to do a non-inventory item. I had created one earlier in the system. So my non-inventory item is office supplies. How did I create that? Just really quickly, we can do training on this. I don't want to get into it, but if it's a non-inventory item, then the system is going to assume the GL account comes from however you set up the GL method, which here is at item level. So I have an item determination that says drive office supplies to account number 653,000, which is my office supplies GL account. So in here, we can go in, make our purchase. So once again, this is an item PO, not a service PO. I'm going to add it to the system. And I'm going to do a receipt on it. So when I do my goods receipt, I'm not going to change anything. We'll just hit add. It works the same way, and therefore I'm in the same predicament where I do not have a journal entry created. So choice is yours. You can do service type POs, or you could create a bunch of items and have those items linked to your non-inventory GL accounts. That is totally a business design decision. Or like I said, you could do a hybrid of the two, but you have to know which you're doing because your query is going to work a little differently. So now when we talk about that query, because we filtered on the type of goods and service receipts, we no longer, I know that that query is no longer going to work. So let's go into our query generator. And I'm going to write this query a little bit faster than the last one. So I'm going to do the same sort of thing. We're going to grab our document number, our document type, maybe our document status. We'll do the document date. Make sure we grab our vendor. That's probably good for there. So I'm just going to execute this quickly. So we can see this one is a little bit different because this is an item type document. So one thing I could do is just filter. I could filter on that, but let's just filter on my document status for now. So I'm going to take my document status into my where field, and I'm going to say our document status equals open. So remember, anything has to have single quotes around it. So now I'm just getting my open POs. And let's grab our PDN1. Oops. And I find on the cloud, there's like a little kind of weird buggy thing here. It looks like my select fields have disappeared. Usually if I just click and come back again. There it is. Okay, so then from PDN1, we want to add our line information. So this information is different because this document is different. So now I've got an item code, an item description. Now I potentially have a quantity, a price per quantity, and then a line total. And then the other fields could be the same. So if you have project codes, you could add it. You definitely want your GL account code. We're going to hit execute on this one. And now we've got our office supplies. So for our 1200. So once again, working a little bit differently. Now you could write a query that's robust enough to pull your items and services if you're doing the hybrid approach like I have here. That's totally fine. I'm going to add my OACT, so that's my GL account, so that I can get my account code and my account name and my segment 1. Sorry, segment 0, segment 1, segment 2, get all that information. And then once again, remember that join, so it's joining on the control account. So here I just want to say based on the expense account, not the control account. So I'm just going to copy, carefully place this in. Anytime you do a change in here where you're kind of fiddling and typing in here, I always immediately hit the execute, because if I've screwed something up, I'll be able to see it right away. And then I can tell if I have to go and fix my last mistake. So frequent execute is your friend here. And there you go. So now I have a legal fees and an office supplies. So I can see whatever GL account is. There's my $1,200 that I need to accrue. And so I could, once again, I could take this information and I could pull it into a journal entry to accrue for this. Now, what we are getting in here is a bunch of other open items for things that the system is treating as inventory. So we can filter that by just filtering on the inventory POs. There's a few different ways that you could tackle this. I will have Kayla send out a query that handles for that so that you only get the open items. And you're welcome to use those. If you do get a query, so let me just actually take that query right now. So I'm cutting and pasting from a completely different document. It could be an email if we send it out to you. If you want to take a query that we send you, I'll show you how to create that in your system. You go to your tools, go to your queries, go to your query generator, and just immediately hit execute. And you're going to get a red bar because it says, well, I don't know what you want. You created a query that just has select star. So I'm going to go into the edit mode. I'm going to delete this. And then I'm just going to paste whatever it is that was mailed to you. And now I've pasted this predefined query into the system. I can hit execute. So this query is a little bit more enhanced where it's only showing me the opened inventory item ones, but all the same information. So there's my GL accounts. Now I know what I need to accrue, and feel free to enhance this as you want. So information that could be useful here is we've got like posting date, for example. This is a good field to have because if I was the one doing the accrual, one thing I might ask myself is, hey, why is this April 1st goods receipt still open? It seems unlikely that a supplier would wait, 45 days to invoice us. Maybe somebody did the invoice freestanding and forgot to close this three-way match. Who knows? So feel free to augment the query however you want for your business to make that, meaningful. But once you pasted it in, you've augmented the query, so you can just always hit the save as. Where do you want to save it? What do you want to call it? So I'm going to call this open item good receipts for accrual. And once you've saved it, you can always just go to your tools, queries, query manager to just launch that query. So I'm going to stop there. Okay, so I don't see any questions coming through, so I'm going to pass this back to Kayla and let her just sort of wrap up. Thank you for attending. I hope this was useful, and we look forward to ideas and suggestions for future cafes. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Alex. So as Alex mentioned, we will be sending out the recording of this session and then also information on how to register for our next Business One Q&A Cafe on Thursday, May 28th. And I'll also send out those queries in some form or another. And yeah, so great. Have a great rest of your Thursday and a good weekend. Thank you.